questions about enterprise architecture that comes up all the time is, what can we do to manage complexity? It turns out that one of the most powerful tools is also one of the most simple, a checklist. If you haven't come across this, I'd recommend reading Atul Gawande's The Checklist Manifesto, because it's a really good practical introduction to what checklists look like and why they exist and how they help to reduce complexity. There are two types, quite distinct types of checklist. One to prevent problems so that they don't occur, and the other is to help resolve problems after they've occurred or as they're occurring. One of the reasons for this is, if we look at the SCAN framework, we can see that there's this difference between the certain and the uncertain, or at runtime we cross over the edge of panic. So they're fundamentally different concerns. One of them is that we have the time to deal with the problem, and the other is when we're under really high time pressure. So a checklist to prevent problems has a typical sequence. It can be any sort of length. So for example, the pre-takeoff check, the pre-starting the engine check on an aircraft, like this one here. You'll notice how in this particular case it's printed in black and it's oriented as a as a portrait layout, as a particular layout. On the other side, when we change over, we need a checklist to help us resolve problems. And here all of the items are in priority sequence. The lists tend to be much shorter, rarely ever longer than 6 or 7 items. And in the engine out example that we have here, you'll notice it's printed a different way round. It's printed with different colour headings so you don't mix them up. But in the engine out test, the engine out example, notice it's about the things that people tend to forget. So when the engine packs up, it reminds people you've got to keep flying at the right speed. And then it says fly the airplane, because if you don't, you're no longer flying an aircraft, you're flying a brick. So these are two quite different types of checklist. The ones that you use when you have time to prevent problems occurring later on, and the other kind of checklist that you use when the problem is actually occurring. Checklists really do help to cut down on complexity and to manage the complexity when we're within it.